the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But he did not allow this remote to work at this point.
Hold on, let's see if we're... Sorry guys, we got a little bit of technical thing here. Let's see if it's... Here you go.
Okay. I can hit the button.
What button? Button mic. Okay.
She's like, it's been dying on
It's dying, yeah.
Yeah. There you go. So as I said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The world was without form, and it was void. And it was chaotic. Water and dirt. It was encompassed around by the Holy Spirit. That this new creation was like a womb, a matrix that brought life to the world that we know today. God began to say things like, let there be light. Let there be animals. Let there be seed-bearing plants. And he says it was good. And again, God said, and then God said, and then God said, and things were great. But there's one thing that God did not say. There was a time where God paused for a moment, and he reached down with his hands, and he grabbed the clay of the ground, and he began to form man, and he began to create him. And just as a potter on the wheel would form a vessel, he created Adam. Now I can only imagine when God was done with his work, he would lift Adam up. He would look nose to nose, just as I did when I helped deliver my two boys that are in this room. And he would begin to breathe his life into that man. At that time, there was congruency between Adam and God. The rabbis of old, they would teach through the Bushnell that the angels in heaven could not tell the difference between Adam and God. That God actually had to stop and tell all of heaven that I am God and he is man, so they wouldn't be confused on who to worship. I just really appreciate that congruency of how close we were to the image of God when he created us. The story continues, and we see that the enemy comes in the garden. And the enemy came with one thing, one purpose, one mission, and that was to create the first cognitive distortion that we see on earth. The enemy's plan was to destroy God's perception of our perception of God and his character. And the enemy would say things like, did God say? And he put this false belief into Adam and Eve's mind. We see all sorts of cognitive distortions. We see that the fruit looks good. It feels like I should eat this, right? Emotional reasoning. And then we also see later on after the fall of man that there's blaming. Adam looked at God and said, you caused this. It was the woman that you gave me that caused this problem. It is your fault, God. So I find it very interesting that right here in the beginning of Genesis chapter 3 that we see so many cognitive distortions that are so prevalent early in the Bible. After the fall of man, we see that Adam and his wife would tuck away amongst the rest of the creation. You know, when you were created for something special, when you were created to stand out, when you're created to rule, and then you all of a sudden change who you are because you believe a lie, that you go and hide amongst the rest of creation, and that you camouflage yourself with plants to blend in with the rest of the world. See, they were acting in a way that was not themselves, and they were living a lie. They were living this cognitive distortion that the enemy placed in their mind. But what I really love about the story is God didn't freak out. It says that he come walking in the garden and he called Adam's name. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't rushing. He just simply asked the existential question, Adam, where are you? Where is he? Who is he? Adam pondered what this is. Now sin entered the world, and there is a disruption in the relationship that Adam and God had. There was a mistrust that was created. And as a consequence, Adam and Eve could not remain in an eternal state because of the sin that indwelled in them. That was perplexing to God. What do I do when the thing that I hate the most dwells inside the creation that I love the most? And God developed a plan. He says, I will send a seed of the woman to the earth. This is the proto-evangelism statement in Genesis chapter 3. It's the first time we mention of a Messiah coming, that the one would come to reunite man and God together into congruency. The story is phenomenal. It's the greatest love story I've ever read. We see a boy, a burden, and a breakthrough. That's not my... There we go. The story of Adam is very similar to my story. I had an existential thought, and that was the beginning of my theoretical orientation. I'm not sure that the slides are matching. That I asked myself at a time in my career, as I was serving in the military, who am I and what am I about to do next? And there's a point in my life where I know my spirit was set free, but my soul, my mind, my will, and my emotions were convoluted. They weren't congruent with that thought, and I was confused, and I was not feeling well. And so I went ahead and I went out to started meeting with a therapist. And through that journey is where I really started to learn who I was as a person and what my theoretical orientation was going to be. I was realizing that my values that I proclaimed were more like on a tower next to me. And I would say, this is what I believe. These are my values. This is what's important to me. But I myself were not congruent with those values. They weren't. I wasn't necessarily living those values. They were just there saying, this is who I am and this is what I believe. And I also had a struggle with, who am I outside of a uniform? After 23 years of serving in the United States Army, you have an identity as a military member. You wear a uniform. This is who you are. Non-commissioned officer, leader of soldiers, right? These are things that I lived, these values for my entire life. And there was a time coming where I was no longer going to be a soldier. So who am I going to be outside of this uniform? Challenging thoughts that I had. Well, to make a long story short, through God's grace and many people in my life and therapy, I've journeyed on this road to Bushnell University to become a therapist. And it was through therapy that I realized that I needed to become a therapist. This was my calling. Well, as I continued on with my learning and schooling, eventually I got to the point where I was at my internship, and one of my mentors, the second one, Ronnie, he's really into CBT, and he's the one that introduced me to cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive distortions. And I said, this is me. This is what I'm going to use. This is exactly what's working for me. If I would have understood cognitive distortions years ago, I would have a much healthier life. And I think this is something that the military needs to teach as well, that we would have a much stronger mental health than our own forces if we understood cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive distortions. But as I continued on my journey and I started working with my supervisor, Michael, I realized that instead of CBT, maybe more of a person-centered or client-centered therapy was where it was at for me. Had the humanistic aspect that I appreciated, and it aligned more with my beliefs and my values, and that is my theoretical lens that I am going to be presenting on today. Well, for the past 25 years, I have been working with young people across Douglas County, especially in rural areas. Roseburg, where I live, is considered a rural area, but then I work in the most rural areas of the rural area. And going out as a military recruiter, working with young people, and then now my job at Umpqua Community College, I go out each day and I meet with high school students in rural areas. I help them discover themselves and what they would like to do after high school, and help them get into higher education or whatever their desire is. This character that I have for my case conceptualization is Justice. And Justice is not a real person, and this is actually an AI generated image of him. But Justice is the kid that I see every day when I step on the high school campuses. I like to refer to Justice as the hoodie kid. When he walks down the hallway, he's the one with his earbuds in and his hood down, and he says, "Don't talk to me, I'm not here." And those are the kids that I always want to wave at and say hi to and good morning. Justice is 17. He's a high school junior. He attends a small rural high school in Douglas County, and he's got it kind of rough. His mom is addicted to methamphetamines. He has not seen his mom for over 3 years now. He has never met his dad, and right now he lives with his grandmother and his grandmother Babs. She's quite the character. She's been working in the mills for a long time, and her body is sore, and she smokes a pack a day, and she likes to self-medicate with whiskey every single night. And, Babs is how I really met Justice, because he came into my office because she said, "I don't want him to turn out like his mom, so you need to fix him." And that was the beginning of our relationship. With Justice, he's got low self-esteem. He's sad because he doesn't know his mom very well. He doesn't know his dad at all. And because of that, he has lack of self-efficacy. He performs poor in school, not because he's not intelligent, but because he doesn't really care or have purpose. His teachers describe him as someone who's a good kid when he shows up to class and when he participates. So, Justice, he's got a little bit of anxiety. He doesn't really like to talk to a lot of people, and he definitely feels uncomfortable talking to girls. He'd like to have a girlfriend, but he fears rejection because he feels rejected by his own mom. And this is something that we've talked about. We're working on. After working with Justice, I realized that he has persistent depressive disorder and a touch of anxiety with that. And we are using person-centered therapy to help build his self-efficacy and to clarify his career path and what he wants to do after high school when he graduates. We used a few assessments with him. Of course, we used the DSM-5 cross-culture, cross-cutting level 1 and level 2, and that's where we identified a lot of his depression and some of his anxiety. We did the ACE assessment. That was kind of rough. And then I also had him take the ONET interest inventory for the Hollins codes to determine what is his value as far as employment and what is he interested in. So our goal with Justice is really to build autonomy, self-acceptance, and to really help him develop as a young man to be ready to graduate high school and then to move on to higher education or wherever he wishes to go. It's working. This is a reflection of him according to the DSM. His depression lasts for more than most days each week, and also because he's a youth, he qualifies at 1 year. It's been going on for more than a year. He also, this is really important, he has low energy and fatigue. You ask him questions, I don't know, you get frustrated because he doesn't really have a lot of drive. Why don't you want to take advantage of school and learning? And doesn't see the purpose of it. What's the point? Why do math? What's the point? He has difficulty concentrating, and he struggles making decisions. And I think a lot of that has to do with the trauma that he's experienced, and he feels overwhelmed. And he has feelings of hopelessness because he's seen his past, and he's seen his parents, and his future sometimes looks a little grim that I don't know if I'm going to pull out of what I'm experiencing here. So to be on the positive side here, as we've gotten to know Justice, we realize that Justice has a lot of hope, and this is important with person-centered therapy. First one is he has a supportive relationship with his counselor. Something about having that therapeutic relationship with the counselor that helps him build that trust and the congruency with his counselor, that we can be transparent together and he feels safe and excited when he comes to therapy. And I think also having an adult role model as a male in his life is very helpful for him as well. He has a vision for his future. He's exploring career paths. He is discovering his own personal values, and he's actually interested in looking at career paths in like automotive, mechatronics, or welding. And so he's very realistic according to the Holland Code. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do his senior year for elective classes and up in the higher education. Each time that he comes in, we review his SMART goals. And what we're doing is setting small, achievable goals for him. And as he achieves these goals, then he is building greater and greater self-efficacy. And he's actually kind of excited to come in and share his accomplishments. We're also working on his self-worth, right? Using unconditional positive guard and empathy to help him understand that it wasn't his fault that his mom left. And that's something that he really struggles with is it my fault that my mom left me? Also, he realizes that he is the captain of his own ship, that he knows that he has a future and there's a possibility for change in his life. And I have discovered that Justice is pretty creative too, right? And sometimes this is tough with young rural dudes, but Justice has used these little hope statements, and we've actually together collaborated and written this hope statement here, and it says, just as Justice words, it says, I stand at the edge of my yesterday, gazing into the wide open field of my tomorrow. I'm not trapped where I came from. I am free to move forward to where I'm going. My pen is still wet with the possibility, and every stroke writes my story of healing, self-discovery, and purpose. The chains of my past are falling, the lies of my pain are breaking, and my life will be defined by my choices and not my circumstances. This really helped me feel that Justice is making positive steps in the right direction to build that self-efficacy and to recognize that through his person-centered therapy experience that he is growing and becoming the man that he chooses to be. A little bit about person-centered therapy. There you go. It's really important. It looks really simple. It looks simple to do this, but doing it can be challenging as a therapist, right? Something you really have to work at, and I'll explain why. Number one, we have to build trust with unconditional positive guard. That is acceptance. Having him come in, spend time with me, and I'm not an adult that judges him. I'm not an adult that tells him what to do. I am 100% for him, and I help him with whatever he brings to me. And he is in control of that session and in his life, and he knows that. But with that, it requires me to have a lot of empathy. Meeting him where he is at, understanding what he's going through, and really relating to his experiences. This is challenging working with people in rural areas because it is a culture amongst its own, and it really takes a lot of time to build trust with people from rural areas. Now, I live in a rural area, but again, I mentioned I live in Roseburg where there's more rural areas outside. So building that trust and rapport with them is really important. Next one is congruency. Congruency, one, we want to help him be the future him that he wants to be and move that closer to align him with his values. But also in the therapeutic relationship, the congruency between him and I. He's a high school junior, 17 years old, discovering what he wants to do with his life. I am 43 with a master's degree, and I've achieved a lot in my life. And so for me to have to take the mask off for a moment and not hide behind my persona and actually be face to face with him, that we are equals in the room, that is very helpful for the therapeutic relationship. Now, it is a challenge for a therapist to do this, but also he has to do some work as well. So in this relationship, I empower him to make the decisions to lead his therapy. He identifies his values. He knows where he wants to go. And this sounds really simple, but trying to get a young dude to say things sometimes can be tough, right? To get young men talking and ask open-ended questions where you get something other than, or I don't know, it's challenging, right? So I have to be prepared to kind of help move that conversation along, but in reality, he is taking charge of his therapy. Carl Rogers, the founder of this, he says, at the core of every human, there lies a powerful and optimistic assumption that all humans want to grow, heal, and develop. Being in that room is a sacred place for me. It's a place of healing. And building that trust and confidence with my client is really important to me. There's a lot of micro skills that we use in person-centered therapy. One of my favorites is reflective listening. That's where he tells me something, I think about it, and then I try and tell him back what I think he's trying to say. Basically, I tell him, I say, you throw it up on the table, and I'll pick it all up and put it together like a puzzle. And he likes that. However, there's times where I mess up. And when I do, I don't understand what he's trying to say. It's fun to watch him correct me and say, no, that's not what I said. Oh, interesting. Okay, thank you for clarifying, right? I also hold space for him. When he comes into that office, that is his room. That is time for him to be able to share what he wants to say. I am present. I'm accepting him for who he is. I have eye contact with him. I listen to him. I'm not focused on other things in the room or my phone. Maybe we might eat a snack together, but I'm not eating my lunch in front of him, right? So we're spending quality time together, and he feels value just being him. He doesn't have to earn my respect. It's already given to him. I am helping him build that autonomy. And like I said earlier, where do you want to go today? What do you want to do? What do you want to work on? And I do have a plan, but it's important for him to operate with his plan. Person-centered therapy. I don't think I let that go. Okay. Person-centered therapy has a lot of strengths and some limitations here. Number one, it's evidence-based. And I only use an evidence-based therapy, right? All the tools that we use in the room, it's got to be evidence-based. There you go. One neat thing about this is it has been proven to be very effective for helping clients with depression and helping clients with anxiety. The outcomes actually show that it's comparable to therapies like CBT. It's also really nice to work with students in rural areas. It's low budget in a sense. You don't have to have the fanciest locations. You don't have to have equipment. You don't have to have tools. You don't have to have worksheets or anything like that. You just sit and be present and listen, and it's very, very effective in that rural area. It is safe and non-judgmental, and again, it's based off of the environment that we are in. It's very flexible. I'll mention here in a minute, but what's great about this is with person-centered therapy, if I'm coming up short, I can always implement other tools inside of it. So I may use CBT techniques and overcome cognitive distortions and things like that. But most of all, I love when we build self-efficacy, when the client goes from wearing his hoodie to each time being stronger and stronger and growing in his pride and knowing where he wants to go. Limitations, it is not proven yet to shown to be effective for strong mental disorders. And it's also a non-directive. Now that's really a struggle for me because I am a former soldier and I'm used to telling people what to do, and I can take charge and I can fix things, but I can't do that in this. can provide that space and the environment that he needs. It can be kind of slow. Like I said earlier, it's hard to get young guys to start talking, and sometimes the therapy we work on small things at small times, but maybe other styles of therapies we could progress a little bit further. And I feel like sometimes if I could just tell people what to do and progress a little bit further, that's not the point of the therapy. The therapy is to maybe move slow. As I mentioned earlier, person-centered therapy is proven to significantly reduce depression and anxiety. And I mentioned earlier that it actually has been proven to work just as effective as CBT. Clients enjoy person-centered therapy. I'm not beating up CBT. I love CBT, but sometimes with young dudes, they don't want to do like a homework sheet, right? They don't want to fill things out. And so I find just spending time with them and having that unconditional positive guard and giving them the emotional feelings that they need. Dudes are complicated, right? I'm sitting in a room and online with majority women, and people think that guys are simple and that if you feed them, if they have fun and a few other things, they're happy. Well, we have emotions too, and it's tough to work with guys sometimes. So having person-centered therapy, it is good to help them be more emotional free. It's really good for the body as well, right? When we have somatic problems where tightness of chest or pains in neck and lower back and basically all the things you feel as a master's student, this type of therapy helps release that tension and it makes you feel better, right? And accessibility has been proven to be pretty effective to where we can take it out to rural areas or underserved populations or most cultures, and it works really well. And like I said earlier, it's easier to deploy and it doesn't really cost a ton. It doesn't need fancy facilities or anything like that. One of the limits that we have is research on strong mental disorders, and that leads me right into my next spot of recommendations. As I researched person-centered therapy, that's when I discovered that there's not a lot of evidence out there that it works for severe mental disorders. And so I would like to see that gap close and have some research in that area. I assume that it works, but I don't know. And I'd like to see the evidence that would prove that it would work. I also would like to see that it would work specifically for rural males. Now, there's a lot of research on treating men, young men, but treating rural area men in that culture with person-centered therapy, there's not a lot of data on there. Also, there is some data on using person-centered therapy combined with other therapies like CBT, and it's still emerging, it's still being researched, but I would like to see more and more in that. Our last one is we are in an age of advanced technology. I remember in high school, like when the internet came out, we're in modern technology, right? Now we're in advanced technology, and we have AI and telehealth, and this is kind of far out there, but there are apps out there where you can talk to AI people. And I am curious to see if there could be a person-centered therapist app that uses AI, and is it as effective? Now, I don't want to be replaced, and I think deep down inside, the computer will never be as great as working with a human. However, if it is something that we can get in the hands of people on a phone, especially young people, and they have an opportunity to download an app and to be able to work and start there, that might be a spark to light a fire to be able to go and see a therapist in person. More importantly, if they disclose something about hurting themselves or anything else, the app would automatically contact emergency services and bring them to the location of their cell phone. So I see some benefits in that, but I would like to see actual research in that to see if it's effective. give you a brief second to look over my references here. This is really important to me. It's giving thanks and gratitude, because I believe through person-centered therapy, if you look at the things that you're thankful for and that you're grateful for, healing will begin. I recognize that I go to a Christian college, so I feel very confident in this room to be able to say that I can give glory to Jesus, my Lord and Savior, for helping me get from where I was to where I am now. There's a lot of people that he sent to help me. Had a wonderful experience. It was life-changing. It helped me. It was paid for. Everything was taken care of. I just had to show up and do the work. And I'm very thankful for that. And I know that that was because he provided. I'm joined with my wife and kids here today, and they have been through a lot, being in the military and being away from home for training, for deployments. And I had a really tough job in the military. And for them to just hang on as I retired to getting a civilian job to now entering into a master's program, really haven't had a lot of time to just relax. Most of all, spend time with them. So thank you. They're here today, of course. Very thankful for my peers here at Bushnell. For those of you watching by stream, thank you for tuning in. I can't see you, but thank you. And I'm also very thankful for my professors. Dr. Emily, thank you for speaking life into me. Professor Sucia, thank you for helping me with my own voice and being one of my supervisors. And she was a blessing, because the Roseburg cohort really, she was our connection to Bushnell in a sense, you know. So she was more than just a professor for us. I'd like to thank everybody at Second Wind Mental Health, where I have completed my internship and my place of employment in the future. So thank you, Ann and Ronnie and Michael and everybody else that's from Second Wind. They poured their lives out into me to help me grow as a therapist. I also like to thank my place of employment, Umpqua Community College. I've worked for the college for 2 years now, and they gave me a soft landing out of the military. And every day that I did my job, I felt like I was conducting therapy, helping young people. From my supervisor, Tawny, all the way to the president of the college, they have really put forth a lot of effort to invest in me and my education, to include rearranging my schedule at work and making sure that I could take time off to do my internships. They're definitely an institution that believes in the value of education and investing in people, even though I'm not attending their institution. But as an employee, I was very grateful. I'd like to thank my therapist, Scott, because if it wasn't for him, I don't know what life would be like. But I know I definitely may have not found myself as a therapist. And lastly, I'd like to thank my struggles, because I believe that I moved at the speed of pain. Sorry. So when you sit next to a fire and the fire gets hot, you have to move back. When the fire gets dim, you have to get close. And moving at the speed of pain when I was uncomfortable is what helped push me out to be able to seek therapy and to determine my existential question of who am I, and teach me that I was thinking wrong in a lot of ways, and also to help me find my calling and using the lens of person-centered therapy to help boys, their burdens, and their breakthroughs. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, I am ready. No?
Hey, Nick, I just wanted to say this is Brandy. I just wanted to say how great it is to listen to you with this presentation, too, and watching your growth just from the first time that we ever talked about when you first entered the program. I can just definitely see your growth, and congratulations on a great presentation. What a great way to represent God, too.
Thank you.
Get him in there. So.
Brandy's a friend of mine. She's a licensed professional counselor, and she also helped me be the NBCC scholarship recipient. So she told me about that. So thank you, Brandy.
Yes, you're welcome.
Dr. Dempster, I'm here as well on the side.
Great. I could ask a question if that's okay with you, Nick.
Yes, ma'am.
You shared your strong faith. Well, first of all, let me say thank you so much for your service and for sharing of yourself in this presentation. You shared of your strong faith in the beginning in a beautiful statement. Then later, when you were talking about your case, one of the goals that you shared was trying to help the client to identify their own values. So, how do you hold space for the client while, of course, staying true to yourself? But how do you hold space for your client, even if he might hold beliefs that might not be congruent with your own religious and spiritual beliefs, or other beliefs, even if they're not related to religion and spirituality?
Thank you. I have a feeling you may ask that question since I took your class in spirituality and counseling, and if I can make a plug, it was very helpful. God is big. He doesn't need me, but he likes to use me. And in the book of Esther, the name of God isn't mentioned one time, but through one young lady, she saved the nation of Israel. So I look at it as the hidden hand of God. His name wasn't mentioned in the book, but you can see his fingerprints all over the whole story. And that's the way it is when I go into the therapy room. Is I just love my client. It does not bother me by their beliefs. I know I hold my beliefs and I respect their beliefs, but I still feel like that my God will minister through me and help me in that room and help provide that space. But my job is to love, not to criticize.
Beautifully said. You have a real gift with words. You're very poetic. So I hear that you're holding back. It's too bad that he can't hear your beautiful poetic voice. You'll have to just use it when you're saying other things. But really well said. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have a question and a comment for the room. You want to come a little closer so they can hear you, if you would mind?
So you mentioned in your case conceptualization kind of that being the only consistent adult is like building that person-centered therapeutic bond. But even Carl Rogers, I think a lot of us would say, struggled with transference and countertransference, and that piece of like that unconditional empathy that blurs the line between like you as a practitioner and them as a client, right? So what do you use to navigate the transference and countertransference dynamic within this person-centered framework?
Okay. If I understand you correctly, I would say that it's not about me, that it's all about my client and their growth, where they want to go, what they need. I think it's important to, like I had in the picture, and Professor Sucia points this out, is holding the lamp for them and walking through them to help them discover their values. I have to keep my biases in check because I think a lot of these young dudes should do certain things in life. But I've seen the effects of higher education or military or anything else like that. But I realize that I'm finally in a profession where I don't have to make anything about me. And that's nice, coming from jobs where I had to recruit or persuade or anything else. So just being an adult influence in their life that will help them discover is really what keeps my biases in check.
What about like, I guess my question is more of like, if you're the only consistent adult, is that creating a relationship of dependence?
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
With the client.
Well, I believe that I'm not the only one in his life. I think I'm just a stable person in his life. And through this seeking and exploring is discovering, are there other people like coaches or school teachers or youth pastors or anybody else in the community that he can also develop to build a relationship with? Because I don't want him to go down a road where he's dependent upon me. The whole point of the therapy is to help him build his own self-efficacy to where he takes control of his own life and he doesn't necessarily need me. Reach out to the community.
I want to piggyback off of that because that's a really good question in the sense because you have the ability now to integrate other services. So getting him connected with making sure he has independently with doctor appointments because he's going to transition from pediatrics in a couple of years to adult services. Checking in what kind of sports he would like to do. We've heard Roseburg has a lot of great resources for the limited resources.
Yeah.
They're great resources, but they're limited. So getting him integrated in what they call wraparound services, getting other people that can, if I can't see you for a week, who can I remind you at the end of every session? Don't forget you have this support. So those are things that reduce that counter transference and transference as well. Any other questions or comments in the room or online before I jump in? Dr. Montgomery?
I would just like to say, as someone who thinks that Carl Rogers is really such an essential grounding in a way to really deeply connect with people and allow them to let, we didn't name this, but the Rogers word for it was the internal valuing process, which is the little growing blade, growing edge of self that really does know what's better. How to make choices that are life affirming. And Rogers was a minister like you,
Yes.
and certainly like you probably know. And I think that was a part of his spiritual understanding of human nature, was that we do have it within us to know what's good for us. And we just need a place that will be less noisy than all of the other places that are grabbing at us and trying to tell us that they know what's good for us, right? So I really feel that your presentation was consistent with that deeply and gave us a case example of how clearing away the clutter in effect and that relationship that you had with your client allowed that client to really make some amazing decisions to support himself in the midst of all of the other competition. So I don't know if that is consistent with your understanding of what happened, but that's what I was taking away from it. What do you think?
I just thought of this too, that I realized that I missed the part in my my message, but the idea of using the faith aspect of it, that when they hid in the garden, that was the first time they felt guilt or a depression or maybe anxiety for the decisions that they made and blending in. And I think through that original story, and then my own life, experiencing my own burdens as a guy, and then working with the young people, that all three were the same story in some way. And using that story in my own experiences to really self-discover, to figure out what makes us happy and what brings us joy, and identify what our values are. I hope I answered that correctly. The greatest thing about going through a therapy program is all your professors are therapists, so they understand all the babble that I try and say. Okay.
So hold on one second. We have one from Christine.
Hi, it's Kirsten.
Kirsten, sorry.
Nick, it's Kirsten.
Yes.
I just really wanted to say that I know that you were at mine earlier yesterday, and it was on person-centered and integrative approach. The person-centered approach, throughout our first night in class together, you were one of the people I sat by when I almost didn't even join that night. So it's been an honor to be with you and a part of that cohort with you. But what I see in here tonight is someone who has truly taken the last 2 years of this program and found the theoretical orientation that fits who you are and that suits who you are as a person on a deep level. And that I have no doubt that the clients that you're working with, whether they are believers, atheists, agnostics, whatever they may or may not believe, that just your presence alone can provide a sense of that unconditional positive regard in a way that they don't need to know that that's coming from your inner self that is based in your spirituality, but that is who you are, and I'm meeting you where you're at. And I just know that that is of great beauty. And I just wanted to really say, just listening to you tonight, there is a certainty about you and a peace about your person-centered approach. And I just am so proud and so happy. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chris. And thank you for being a friend in the program and helping me.
And we have one for the room as well. Kristen.
So, I've been honored to be in the past 2 years in this program, and all of the wisdom that you've shared. But I think what I took away from this is your humility, and being able to see people as people and to give them the quality that possibly God sees us, non-judgmental and full of grace, full of compassion. So thank you for reminding future counselors to myself. This is what we need to be bringing into the office.
Thank you.
Okay, were there any more comments or questions for the room or anyone else online? Okay, so please step come this way with me. I'm Dr. Hemingway, and I want to just give some feedback as well for Nick. As
We're dance partners too.
I have to say that being a Christian therapist, one of the biggest pieces that really stood out to me, because this is a conversation we have very consistently, is bringing your authentic self within this room that you share with someone. We're going to meet people that don't share those same values and qualities. But what I heard through this presentation is Nick being able to integrate, like, this is who I am. I don't have to push. I just represent and show up as this person, as this man of God. And that's the biggest piece, that the light. We don't have to beat someone over the head for them to see who we are and those characteristics and values. Most importantly, because he is working with the, as I heard the word bro and dudes and bros popping in, that is such a common language that allows him to be able to really connect with the young men that he works with. Because when you talk about consistency and meeting that particular population of young men, they have a lot of pushback because they don't know who they are and they're angry, and you're representing everything that they're not. So even being able to use the same terminology that they use and sharing consistency, like, let me just open this space and tell you it's your space, but you show that vulnerability because clients can smell fear. They can tell when you're not being authentic. They can tell when you're being, you have a false perception. It's not genuine. And so watching Nick talk about that and how he integrates and how he can use PCT for these clients that he's going to come in contact with, particularly, again, Roseburg is very limited resources, but what they do have, they work very well with those resources. So being able to have the opportunity to really just show up as a healthy male who can say, hey, I've gone through therapy. I know exactly what you're feeling, and have a very authentic conversation with that process. One of the things that I tell my own clients, and I told the students that I taught this semester, the process will punk us out. And as a young boy, because they already have a lot of anger and frustration built up and resentment, they may not want to go through that process. But then he has the ability to take off the layers and say, hey, like, I get where you're at. And that authentic space that he can show up for them. So I think he put this presentation together very well. I love the fact that he's putting God first, which is the center of, being a Christian university. We get to talk about those things more openly, but we don't have to always talk about them as much as we can be about those things. And so he can let his light shine and still show and lead somebody. He doesn't always have to water. He can sometimes plant. And in doing so, he's building up this next generation. I think, again, he's going to be another wonderful contribution to the Roseburg-ish area, the Outer Lane rural area. So super, super proud of him as well for the presentation today. Well put together. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for participating today. Thank you for being a part of my life.
Congratulations.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here. I can get this mouse to work right,
It's
because
very-
it's a little.
It's-
Oh,